like going to the kitchen and cooking along. It was nice to meet everyone.
Great to meet you too. Let's spotlight. Hi, Sherry.
Hi, how are you? I'm Sherry. I'm from San Diego, California. And same as she is, I've been debating whether or not to start the recipe. Usually I make bagels if I was going to attempt that on a Sunday morning when I have more time. So at least I was looking forward to this and learning more about bagels since we love bagels. So, and I grew up on the East Coast, and there's nothing like a good East Coast bagel because they can't compete out here.
Absolutely. Yeah, if either of you want to cook, you are 100% welcome. We very much welcome everyone to cook. Or if you just want to watch for now, we will also be sending out the recipe and the ingredients again to you later. And we have a little kitchen library where we like to publish a lot of our recipes and the video for this class that we're recording. And so you can always access that later if you don't feel like cooking right now and you'd rather just kind of watch in on some of the fun. But welcome everyone, this is really exciting. And we have a little joke that different cultures have a different idea of what's on time. And so for the Jewish folks, we started things a little bit late. So on time is going to be in a few minutes, but it looks like we're not having a bunch more participants join. So I think we're probably going to get started soon. But thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for participating in the chat. That was really fun. And thank you to our friends for sharing. That was awesome. So I think we're probably going to get started. And if people are coming in, that's great. And yeah, so hello, welcome everybody. My name is Ruby, and this is a Tradition Kitchens class. I'm a Tradition Kitchens ambassador. On this call, I'm going to give a little shout out to Julia, who is one of the founders of Tradition Kitchens. She's awesome. I'm going to spotlight her for a second so she can wave hi to everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're very excited. I'm going to be helping Ruby monitor the chat and giving some additional instructions. So thanks for joining us.
And we also have one of our Tradition Kitchens interns on here named Brianna. She's another one of the ambassadors like myself. And I just want to give you a little explanation about Tradition Kitchens before we get started so everyone knows what we're about. We're a little organization that began, it has Atlanta roots through Julia, and it began as in-person classes. Obviously that's not possible anymore, but some of the silver lining of not being able to do the in-person classes is we could have this really fun audience with people from all over the world. All of you lovely people over Zoom, and we love expanding into this virtual kitchen space that we now have. So we're all about trying to connect people through different cultures, cuisines, and different age groups, and just create a kind of fun and more casual learning space that everyone should feel comfortable in, and we welcome everyone. So hello, and please continue to use the chat to ask questions and everything. And now I want to introduce Erin, who will be our amazing host who's going to be helping us learn bagels tonight. So say hi for everybody, Erin.
Hi everyone, welcome. Awesome to see such a great turnout. It should be a fun class. We'll see. I'm shooting for about an hour. We'll show you how to make the dough, and then I've made some dough yesterday that will, it's so bright in my kitchen, that we'll use to show how to shape the dough and then boil and bake them into bagels. The bagels do take an hour or two to rise, depending on how cold or warm it is in your house. So we won't have time to do the whole process today, but we'll try to show you everything. So if you want to come back and either start today, which we hope you do with us, or you can finish it later this evening, or like I did, I put the dough in the fridge and it develops more flavor overnight, and you can go ahead and shape them and bake them in the morning. So I think we should, Ruby, are we ready to get going?
Let's take our quick Tradition Kitchen selfie first, which is something we love to do, as Aaron knows, as a good friend of mine. So I want to also thank him so much for teaching today. But Ruby, shall we ask everyone to go on the bottom left and to turn on their videos? We'd love to see your faces. We know people are calling in from all different places. This kitchen behind me is totally not real. It's my dream kitchen. Every class I pick a different one. So wherever you are, it doesn't matter. Whoever you're with, by yourself, with others, we'd love to have you. And we want to take a quick selfie. So Ruby, do you want to count us down? A selfie is what, Ruby?
A Zoom selfie. And it's just a cute way to show everyone that was here and be this wonderful virtual community that we are. So on the count of 3, we will take our selfie. Everyone smiling. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Oh my gosh, we have, I have to spotlight Angela. I don't know about you all, but I'm definitely a pet person. Angela, can you introduce your sous chef to all of us?
This is Blue.
Hi, Blue. Thanks for joining. We hope you love bagels. All right, that was awesome. Thanks, everyone. We're really excited. And now I'll turn it back to Ruby. And we do just want to say we're monitoring the chat. We'll get back to you as quickly as we can. So just be patient with us. We appreciate it. All right, Aaron, you want to kick us off?
Right. Yes, I apologize if there's noise. I'm trying to heat up some water right now, which it looks like it's gotten warm, so I'll turn that off. Ruby, can we pop up just the little description of what we're going to do today and walk people through it?
Yes, for sure. So I'm going to be sharing my screen. Erin made this wonderful thing for us tonight.
Just a little bit of visual for those of us that like to. Cool. All right, so what we're gonna need today is a large container or bowl that we're gonna make the dough in. We're gonna need a small bowl that we're gonna make we're gonna proof the yeast in, if depending on which yeast you use. I like to have a little spatula on hand just to wipe my hands after mixing the dough. We'll need a large pasta pot for boiling the bagels. And I have a little bit of parchment paper and a cookie sheet that we'll end up baking on. Got those set up ahead of time. And I like to use a food scale for baking. It tends to go better if you use exact weights as opposed to teaspoons, tablespoons, and cups. I have measured everything out. So, so hopefully if you don't have a scale, then we should be able to be okay. I just did the measurements this afternoon, so hopefully they're close enough to accurate. On the ingredient side, we've got some instant yeast. Let's see, I've got another package here we can show you. I typically use the Fleischmann's Rapid Rise instant yeast. If you have just the regular, there's another active yeast, then we'll show you how to do that with the active yeast, but I'll be using the instant yeast. We will need some bread or high gluten flour. Either, it doesn't really matter. Bagels like the high gluten flour. Bread flour is higher in gluten than normal all-purpose flour, but even all-purpose flour will work. So we'll be fine on that. We have a little bit of sea salt that gives the bagels some of the flavor, some sugar, just regular fine granulated sugar, and we'll have some water. And then the thing that makes New York bagels is some barley or some barley malt. You can use barley powder as well. Saw a couple people talking about that. It's optional, you don't need it. It just gives it a little bit of that extra flavor. And then we'll, in the end, we'll need some toppings. So we've got some sesame and some poppy and some everything but the bagel seasoning from Trader Joe's.
Hey, Erin, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
We have a couple questions. I'm not sure if Ruby can see them because she's sharing her screen. But Christine wants to know, can we use honey instead of sugar?
Yes, honey. Yeah, I think we can. Yes, some recipes do call for honey, and it's often honey replaces the barley malt as well. Barley malt is it's part of the grains from the barley plant. They turn it into this sort of liquidy thing that helps add flavor, but it also helps the dough rise and give it structure and some of the food that causes the dough to rise. So so it'll help a little bit with structure, a little bit with flavor, and a little bit with the dough rising as quickly as we'd like it to.
Cool.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Ruby, are you able to see them? If not, I can read them out.
I can't see them.
Okay,
I don't
so
think-
yes, this is being recorded. Yes, you will receive it, but the goal of our time is to be together and enjoy it. So if you have to leave, don't worry, you'll get it. What can you use instead of malt syrup?
You can just leave it out. It's fine. It's not required. I haven't actually tried it without it, but it should be fine. You can use whole wheat flour if you prefer whole wheat bagels. Those are also high in gluten, so that's another good option.
And how many bagels does this recipe make?
This one will make 8 bagels.
Cool. Great. I think what we also are going to do is I'm going to post a link in here so everyone can follow along. Someone pointed out that the measurements on the email are different than what is posted, which is correct. We're just keeping everyone on their toes tonight.
Yes, sorry. If you had asked about measurements ahead of time, I used Google for those yesterday, and then I remeasured them today. So today's measurements should be a little more accurate.
Okay.
Apologize for that.
No worries. Thanks for going over and beyond as our chef extraordinaire. And in case everyone doesn't know, Aaron is not a chef by trade. This is just a fun hobby for him. And that's really what we're all about at Tradition Kitchens, is having our neighbors share their awesome recipes with everyone. So I'm gonna just, Heather, we answered this already, but you can leave out the barley malt, but could you use honey or molasses instead is the question.
Sure. It'll give it a little bit extra of that sweetness.
And
if you have the active dry yeast, that would be the preferred.
what about fast?
Oh, fast acting. So actually, yeah, let's use the fast acting.
Okay.
So something like that.
Cool.
But we'll show both ways. If you're using the fast acting, you don't typically have to add the yeast to water and then let it sit for 5 minutes. We're gonna do a quick version of that just so we can show what that looks like. Typically for the fast acting instant yeast, you can just pop it in right with the dough, but we'll show that. I guess we'll get started.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes. All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make the dough together, and I'll show you how to do that. And then I've made some dough ahead of time that we will then use to show you how to divide the dough, shape it into bagels, boil, add toppings, and then bake them.
And
All
everyone,
right.
just a friendly reminder, you are muted. So if you're unmuting yourselves, please don't, because we want to be able to hear Aaron and all of his great instructions. Aaron, you're using instant yeast. Sherry Rosenberg, I don't know, you wrote SAF instant or dry yeast. If you can clarify what you meant by that, that will help us. And everyone, you can download this. And everyone, you can see Aaron. He is pinned right next to the recipe. So we will be alternating back and forth between showing the recipe and showing Aaron in his kitchen. So please be patient with us. Aaron,
All
keep
right.
going.
If it's not confusing, I've got a second iPhone here. That's Aaron Meyer's iPhone. Can we pin that one? And I will point it down so we can see
I'll do that one.
what we're doing.
Let's see if I can add spotlight. Okay, there we go. Can everyone see that? I hope so.
Still see the keynote.
Yeah, this is what we were mentioning.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Can
when we
people-
take the keynote down, then we'll be able to see both of you side by side. So maybe we'll take it down, Ruby, for now, and we'll come back to it.
Okay, sure.
Perfect. All right, cool. So hopefully you can see, I've got a little, my iPad and everything here. All right, so the first thing I did was I measured out some water. Right now, let's see, I've got a little thermometer. It's about 107 degrees. We want somewhere between 105 and 110. So we'll get the water nice and hot, which we've got here. I'm gonna turn on the scale. And we want about 390 grams. I've got way too much right now, so I'm just gonna get rid of some.
We can't see anything you're doing.
Nothing.
What do you mean? We have them both pinned. So if you are new to Zoom, on the top right of your screen is a button that says view. So you can either have a gallery view where you're seeing everybody who is attending the class, or speak with you, which is what we have and recommend for everyone to see. And on our screens, we see two views of Aaron in his kitchen. If you are not seeing this, please message us separately. All right, great.
Cool. So the one thing I forgot to do ahead of time was to zero my scale. So that's what we want to do first. I'm going to put the glass on the scale, and I hit the tare or the zero button. And now I can go ahead and add 390 grams of water. So always make sure to do that. That's an easy thing to forget. Let's see. Almost there. We're at 360. $390. All right. We've got the water that we're going to need, and we are going to take a separate bowl, and we're just going to add about 150 grams to it, to the smaller bowl from the main 390. Doesn't need to be quite exact, but we'll go do that. So this is, we're going to proof the yeast depending on which yeast you're using. If you're using instant yeast, you can typically skip this step. But we'll show it. I sometimes do it just because it makes it easier to distribute. All right, and then the next thing we'll do is we'll take the 6 grams of instant yeast that I have, and we're gonna go add that to the water, and we'll get that in there. And then I'm gonna also take the sugar, 25 grams of sugar, and we're gonna add that to the mixture as well. And then we'll just mix that up a little bit so that it starts to dissolve. And we're gonna add this into the dough later on, but for now we'll just get that so that the yeast is starting to activate. Okay, and we'll go set that aside.
Ruby,
So the next thing,
are you able to, hold on, Aaron, we have a couple of questions, and just, we're gonna try to do our best to get to everyone's questions, so we do appreciate your patience. But there are a couple of questions in here. I wanna scroll back. Ruby, do you see those questions?
Yeah,
So-
sorry. So we were talking about I think we already answered, does instant yeast work?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think the most recent one was Sherry's about how many grams set out from the 390.
about 150 grams or about 3/4 of a cup. And then we've also added, so we've added to the water, we've added the instant yeast and the sugar. So we have a combination of water, sugar, and instant yeast in here. You can just give that a little swirl while we've got it up.
And Zara wants to know, is the water amount additional to 390 grams?
No, that's a great question. I took the 150 out of the 390. If you added an addition, you're going to get a very goopy dough. So make sure that you take the 390 out of the 150. You take the 150 out of the 390.
Rudy,
All
you
right.
want to take the rest of those? Just 2 more questions and then we'll keep going.
Cool.
We have a question from Jennifer about how long Erin has been making bagels.
Aha. This has been a COVID hobby for me. I've been eating bagels for my whole life, but finally got sick with COVID of not being able to go get decent bagels and decided to start making them. I've been making sourdough bread for about 5 years now, pizza for 3 years, and now bagels for a number of months. Cool.
And then we had a question that was just as we're going, maybe it would be easier just to say the measurements, and then we can also pull up the PowerPoint.
Sure.
If that works.
Yeah.
Cute. Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. We really want to both show Erin and so everyone can see what's going on, but also show the ingredients as we're going. And it's proving to be difficult to show you guys both in a big screen at once. So we do apologize for this technical moment, but just please hang in there with us and we'll keep trying our best to make sure everything's good for you guys.
All right, so the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to, so there's a question, how long does the yeast rise in the water? It only needs a couple minutes and that starts activating it. So while we're making we're going to add the flour and start getting that going, then by that time, the yeast will be activated. So we're going to take the bread flour. You can use your whole wheat, you can use high gluten flour, and we're going to add 390 grams of flour. This is equivalent to about 4 3/4 cups of flour. I've got a little scooper that I like to use. I've made sure that this time I did zero the scale ahead of time. And so we're just going to go ahead and add 390 grams. Actually, no, this one is 570 grams, sorry. So we'll just go and keep adding flour. And we're just a little over, so I'll just take some back. All right, we've got our 570 grams of flour. I'm just gonna go put that off to the side. All right, and now we will add the salt to that. So I've got 8 grams of salt, or about a little over 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt. We're just gonna go ahead and dump it in. I like to give it a little swirl just so it spreads it out a little bit. You can also go and just take your hand and spread it out. We'll also make just a little indentation in here, a little sort of hole in the center. And we'll go and take that yeast that we've been proofing and just pour it in the middle. Sometimes we can take a little bit of flour and just try to grab it all out of there. All right, and now we're gonna add the water in pieces. If we added it all together, it can make the dough very goopy. So we add it in pieces. So since there was already 150 grams of water in the yeast mixture, we're just gonna start with that. And I'm just gonna mix it by hand. And we'll just do a little quick mix. If you have a KitchenAid or a stand mixer, you can do this in there as well. It's a little less messy and a little less tiring on your arms. But just for the sake of the class, we're just gonna do it by hand today. So I'm just going ahead and giving the dough a little bit of a mix to get some of that flour and water mixed together.
Erin, could I
The oth-
ask a few more questions?
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. Someone actually just now answered in the chat about the sugar, but I was just about to ask about the sugar. And then we had a question about, so are we looking for the yeast to bubble?
a little bit. It's a good sign that it's activated. So it, just a minute or two. Sometimes the recipes say 5 minutes, but especially if you're using that instant yeast, you don't even need to activate it. So you could have just poured it right in with all the other ingredients.
All right, and then we had someone ask if there were any changes needed for a high altitude.
That is a great question. I'm not sure. Let's go ahead with the recipe and we'll see if it changes the baking time at all. And yes, if you're using the different yeast, we'll still use the same amount of yeast. And if the yeast isn't bubbling, that's okay. It's still gonna to wake up and do its thing once we get it going in here. So I'm gonna then, now that we've mixed some of the dough, I'm gonna take half the water and I'm just gonna add the remaining half. So we've got the water that we remain. I'm gonna take half of this and pour it in. And I'm gonna give it a little bit of mix. This is, again, we were trying to make sure that the dough doesn't get goopy. We want the flour to absorb the water and start building structure. If you don't build structure, then you just get this goopy dough that falls apart on you and doesn't hold its shape. It doesn't hold itself into the bagel shape. So we want to add it in pieces so that we can help build a little bit of that structure. And so eventually, once we add all the water, we're going to make sure this is all super mixed and there's no flour remaining. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a hand mix right now. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to take my teaspoon, and if you've got the barley malt, we're going to take that and we're going to just add about a teaspoon of it. It's a little messy, so we'll see how that goes. So I'm just adding that into the dough, and we'll get it nice and mixed in with our hand. And we'll also add the remaining of the water at this point. So now all the water is in, the barley is in, all the yeast is in, all the ingredients are in at this point. So now we're just going to start mixing. And we want at this point to get all of the flour mixed in with the dough. And you'll see right when we start, the dough is it's gonna tear, it's not gonna be very cohesive. And so once we're all mixed, we're gonna go make that dough into the right shape and the right texture that we want. Again, if you have a KitchenAid, this makes this a lot simpler. And the flavor, yeah, the barley is added to give it a little bit of flavor. It also helps the dough rise. It helps give it some structure. So the flour and the water and the yeast all come together to provide food for the dough to grow. And so the barley malt helps provide some of that, it's a little bit of that extra food to help the dough grow. And then it also gives it a little bit of that flavor that we've come to used to in a New York bagel. So at this point, I'm still just trying to get all the flour mixed in. If you're using a KitchenAid or a stand mixer, we're going to do it about the same time. It's going to go for about 10 minutes total. You can do a little bit less on the KitchenAid. If you are using the KitchenAid, you want to start at a low setting, at least for a couple minutes. And then as the dough starts to come together, you can raise it to a medium. We do want to avoid using the high. It can just pound the dough a little bit too much. So we want to start on a low and then move into a medium. So at this point, most of my dough, I think, is pretty well mixed in. I will just make sure that we've got all the flour mixed in. So you can see the dough, it's pretty goopy. It's breaking on me. It's got all these lines in it, and it's just sort of a little bit of a mess. That's okay. that's how it should be at this point. So what we're going to do is we're just going to knead it for about 5 to 10 minutes. If you want, you can go put this on a surface or on a cutting board and knead it with your palms. I'm a little bit lazy and prefer to avoid having to take it out, put it back in, and then clean another item. So I'm just going to go and do the kneading here inside the container or the bowl that I'm using. And so basically what I'm just doing is I'm just lifting it up and pushing it back down. Kneading it, you'll sort of get your palms and your into the motion to just try to build some of that structure. If you're using whole wheat, you can add a little bit more water because the whole wheat will absorb a lot of that, will absorb more of the moisture than a regular bread flour or high gluten flour. You sort of want the same consistency to what we've got here. And so depending on the flour, you might need a little bit less water, you might need a little bit more water. And I would say if you're unsure how much more water to add for the whole wheat, just add a little bit at a time and see how it's doing. Make sure to mix it in. Make sure it doesn't get too goopy. And so you'll see over the next couple minutes as we knead this, the dough is really going to start to come together and take a different shape. It's going to start holding itself together. It's going to, we're going to be able to pull on it and it's not going to tear anymore. And so those are all good signs that the dough is doing what we want it to do. It's going to start smoothing out and looking more like a dough that you're used to seeing in pictures and things. While I'm doing this and while we're all sort of either getting a workout or turning on our KitchenAids, do people have any questions?
Let's see. I think I got one that was sent to me. How much honey instead of syrup?
That is a good question. If you're making it along with us, let's just go with a teaspoon for now. But I will go look it up and we'll follow up on how much honey to add. See, a couple of questions are coming in.
Yeah, Ruby, are you able to see them?
Mm-hmm. So someone asked table salt or kosher salt.
Either. I like to use sea salt. If you've got kosher salt, that's fine too. I think you can use about the same amount, which is about 8 grams or a little more than 1 1/4 teaspoons.
And then someone wanted to know, what are instructions for overnight proofing?
Yeah, great question. So we'll do the same steps up until now for the overnight proofing. And then I'll just show you in the next step that we'll let it rise a little bit. Typically what we'll do is we'll let the dough double in size. But if you're gonna let it go overnight, I tend to let it go just a little under double. Stick it in the fridge because it's gonna keep rising. And then overnight it'll get to the doubling and that'll be perfectly proofed. The overnight proofing will let it develop some extra flavors. Although it's often very hard to taste, I think it tends to be a little bit of a placebo effect. I've tried both where I've let it proof overnight and where I've just made it in an hour, and both have been very delicious. So you can't go wrong either way. In theory, the overnight should have a little bit more extra flavor. So you can see now, even just a couple minutes into doing the kneading, when I go and pick up the dough, it's not immediately breaking like it was before. So these are all good signs that the dough is starting to come along and do what we want it to. I will often rotate. I'll pull out the dough, push it down, give it a 90-degree turn, and just keep doing it that way. You can see now it's really starting to come together, whereas before it just fell apart. So again, good signs that the dough is starting to do what we want it to do. It's still a little bit, if you can see, there's still all these grains in here, so we still want to keep going a little bit more. Want it to be a little bit smoother.
Someone wanted to know if they're using malt powder instead of the syrup. Is it the same amount that would go in?
That's a good question. We'll follow up on that one as well. As you can imagine, there are lots of different recipes. Since this has become a COVID hobby, I haven't mastered all of them quite yet.
And a few more questions are coming in. Sandra wanted to know what size your container is.
Great, two great questions. So this one is a 6-liter container. Let's see, or a 6-liter container. The one that I used yesterday is a 4-quart, 3.5-liter container. I tend to like the slightly smaller one for the bagels just because it's easier to see when it's doubled. In this bigger one, you can see that the dough, when it's going to spread out, like it barely fills the whole bottom of this container. So it's a little harder to see that it's doubled in size. So I like to use the slightly smaller ones unless you want to double the recipe size here, and then you can make 16 bagels, and it'll be a little bit easier in the bigger container. We have added all the ingredients at this point. The salt is in. If you haven't added it in, you can add it now. It's fine. As you still need the dough, the salt will spread out in the dough. So that's okay if you miss that, but you do want all of the ingredients in at this point. So you can see the dough's coming along pretty good. We'll probably just give this another minute. As I am holding it, it's holding its shape. You can see here that the dough is looking a little bit smoother and flatter. So those are all good signs. If you want to make raisin bagels, that's a good question. I think I've never made bagels with things like raisins in them yet, but using my knowledge from sourdough, if you're adding nuts or other ingredients like raisins, I think you would add it now. You'll just have to know that all of your bagels will have raisins in them. And again, since we're still kneading it, you can add the raisins now, and then it'll still spread it out, which is what you really just want, is to spread out all those ingredients. Okay, we're just gonna do one more minute. The dough is looking pretty good. Did I see another question came in? I missed it, but saw something came in.
The question was, how long after the bagels are baked are they going to be good before they spoil at room temperature?
That's another great question. The bagels will last about 2 to 3 days. I like mine super fresh, so what I end up doing is I underbake them a little bit and then immediately freeze them. And then when I want to eat them, then I take them out of the oven, put it at 350 and cook for 15 minutes. And that finishes them up, gives them the golden brown color. And then because they're in the freezer, I basically get fresh bagels for up to a month. So that's just a great way that I've been finding to avoid or to ensure that I always have fresh bagels. So the dough looks pretty good at this point. I'm just going to use the spatula and clean off my fingers. And
A quick question, sorry, about the dough consistency.
Yep.
The final after it's kneaded.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry. So about the dough consistency after it's kneaded, what exactly should it be? Someone was asking, saying their dough is completely smooth, and asking if that's okay.
That is perfect. We want the dough smooth. I don't quite know if I got there on the smoothness with this one. Let's see if the iPhone can show it. You can see it's pretty smooth here. But yes, you do want it smooth. If it's still rough, you want to go a little bit longer. I tend to sort of, at least for the demo today, we're going to go with a little bit of in between smooth and rough. But the smoother, the better. It'll just help create that a more even crust when we go and bake it. All right, so at this point, and I'll come back to the cooking times. We're gonna, if we have some time, we'll actually do the baking. And so I'll cover all that again. At this point, the dough is ready. We've finished it. As we said, the consistency is good. I'm going to find where I put the cover. You can either take a kitchen towel and cover the bowl, or you can use a top if you've got one, or even saran wrap works well. The other thing that I'll do, you can see on this one, I've used a rubber band to mark where it was in the beginning, so I know that it's doubled. So this is just my easy way of knowing that it's doubled in size. You can see this dough has doubled in size. Since this dough is ready, I'm going to go ahead and put my rubber band on the other one. And we'll just, and actually I end up in about 20 minutes, we'll go and redo the rubber band. The dough is going to sink back down a little bit and settle. And so we're just going to go ahead and let it settle, and we'll put the rubber band back on then. What you can do, there's a couple things. So you can either leave out the dough on the countertop and let it rise, which is what we're going to do now. It's kind of cold in my apartment right now, so the dough is going to take longer if it's cold. The warmer it is in your house, the faster it will rise. The cooler it is, the colder it will. The cooler it is, the longer it will take. And then what I'll show you right here is I have a dough proofer. And so what I typically do is I'll just stick the dough in here at 78 degrees. I've got the proofer set at 78 degrees, and that's sort of the ideal temperature for getting it to rise in about an hour. Like yesterday, I did it in about an hour. The other option that we can do is we can go over to the oven and we can turn on the lamp, and we'll put the dough. So the oven is off. You can see the oven is off, but I put the lamp on, and then you can put the dough in here. And that will, the oven with the lamp on will add a little bit of temperature to the ambient air and will help proof the dough a little bit quicker. So those are all your options. The other thing actually we'll want to let it sit for about an hour and double in size. If you're going to put it in the fridge overnight, go a little bit under double, because it will keep going once you put it in the fridge. I did notice last night, it continued to rise for maybe another 20 minutes. And then once it got cold, then it stopped rising and didn't rise at all, or very little for the rest of the night. Slow cooker might provide a little too much heat on the bottom. So I would recommend the oven trick. The oven light trick would be better than the slow cooker. And I think I saw there was a question about using a stand mixer. You could have used a stand mixer up until this point. My arms are quite tired from doing all the kneading, so definitely a stand mixer would help. But I didn't want to assume all of you had it, so we went ahead with just doing it the hand kneading. Any more questions, and then we'll show what happens in about an hour.
Yes, I'm sorry, I have a question. My hands are just full of dough to type.
Yes.
And so after we put it in the fridge, if we're going to do it overnight, we still go ahead and do the oven trick after it's doubled?
Yes. So you'll want to let it go out for maybe 40-45 minutes till it's slightly underneath doubling, and then you'll put it in the fridge to finish off. If you put it in the fridge now, it won't rise enough, and it might not quite get where you want. At which point you could always the nice thing about temperature with dough is you can always customize it to your schedule. So like maybe you want to go to bed tonight and you don't want to wait an hour for it to rise. You can put it in the fridge right now And then tomorrow morning, you could take it out and let it do the hour rise. And then when it gets to doubled, then you continue on. So lots of different options. I think someone said, can we see the dough? And it does not have to go in the fridge. I tend to like to just do it all at once. Make the dough, let it rise, and then get it all done with. And then I stick it in the freezer, and in the morning, I do the final baking. So this is the dough that I made yesterday. It's doubled in size. You can see, let's see if the iPhone will show it. There's a bunch of bubbles in this dough, which is what you want to happen. That's giving sign that the yeast has been doing its thing and providing gas to make it rise. So these are all good signs that your dough is done. Roughly double. If it's more than double, it's okay. If it's a little less than double, I would just wait it a few more minutes. It should be rising pretty quickly by the time it's close to doubling. So, you know, maybe check it every 5 to 10 minutes to see how it's doing. And one thing that I like to do maybe about a half hour in is just give it a little bit of give the dough a little bit of a stretch. And I'll show you what that looks like. It just helps provide a little bit more strength to the dough. So I'm gonna wet my hand just a little bit. I'm gonna sort of wring out my hand so it's not super wet, just has a little bit of moisture on it so that the dough doesn't stick to my hand. And then what I'll do is I'll just take one side and pull and stretch it over. And then I'll turn it, grab the dough, stretch it, fold it back over on top, turn it again 90 degrees. So we'll just sort of get all 4 corners, stretch it, fold it on top, and then do that with the final side, stretch it, fold it back on top. And we'll just do that once at about halfway through, 20 to 30 minutes through. We'll give it a little bit of structure. All right. Any more questions? Halfway through proofing, yes, good question. Yeah, so in about 20 to 30 minutes from now, if you've been making it, then you'll just do that little bit of stretch, and that just helps give it a little bit of strength so that the bagels hold their shape. Was there a question about bread proofing? I caught part of it.
I said, can you tell us more about your bread proofing machine? Does it make yogurt too?
Yes, this is an interesting little device. It is not the cheapest, but that's okay. Since I make bread a lot, it's ended up being quite worth it. It's got a thermometer on one side. I can set the temperature here. And then essentially, it's basically a simple little box that just keeps the ambient air temperature. You can see sort of the metal on the bottom gets hot, gets a little bit of warmth, and provides heat to the entire box. There's a little tray which I put some water. It provides humidity so that the dough doesn't dry out. You don't have to put a top on if you use this proofer, but I like to just put the top on just to be safe. You can make yogurt in here. You can make, supposedly you can do chocolate tempering, although I found it a little frustrating for chocolate tempering because you have to keep swirling the chocolate, and you can't really do that with the lid on. It's not a fancy oven like some proofers are, where they provide a lot of heat to get the proofing done in a couple minutes. This is basically just the ambient temperature, keeps it at that temperature. One benefit of using something like this is that with the hour-long rise, you get more flavor than if you just had a 20-minute rise. So that is one benefit to doing a slightly slower rise than doing it in a big proofing oven that just gets it done real quick. That's another benefit of doing the rise partially and then sticking it in the fridge, is that overnight it will develop some more flavors. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take this dough that's ready and we're gonna divide and shape it into bagels, and then we'll do the boiling and the baking. So what I'm gonna do here is put a little bit of dough, a little bit of flour on my surface, just so it doesn't stick. There's maybe never such thing as too much flour, although I try not to use too much flour, so then it doesn't get into the dough. We'll take, you can see this is the dough that's ready. It's nice and smooth. Lots of bubbles and things in here. One thing that I like to do is take a little flour and just put it along the edge. It'll provide a little bit of making sure the dough doesn't stick as we take it out. And so then I'm just going to reach in and trying to be very
How come you
careful
started already?
because we don't want to
11:30.
we don't want to deflate the entire dough. So we don't want to just grab it and yank it out. So we're just going to carefully get at the edges and start to tip the dough out of the container, and it should come out and go onto the surface pretty easily. All right, and so what I'll do at this point is just try to stretch the dough out a little bit so that we can get it divided into equal sections. You can either just grab it and stretch it, it'll sort of come back together. That's okay. So we'll just spread it out a little bit. You can add a little bit of flour about halfway through, halfway down, just to provide some, when we're gonna go cut the dough. I've got a little dough knife here. You can just use a regular bread knife, kitchen knife. Not serrated would be ideal. You can try to tear it with your hands, although some kind of knife typically works a little bit better. A spatula will work as well. That might be the best recommendation if you don't have an actual dough knife. And we're just gonna cut it in half. And then since we're gonna make 8 bagels with this, I'll cut each one into 4. So let's just cut each bit into halves. And then into halves again. And we don't have to be super exact, because what I'm going to end up doing is taking the scale again, and we'll just measure, and we can find a couple that are a little bit larger and add to the slightly smaller ones. Since the dough size that we have, each one will be about 125 grams. So we can look here, this one, let's see. This one's a little too big, so we'll just take a little out. So that's about perfect. So that one's good. That one's too big. So we'll just pull off a little bit. That's pretty good now. Can add a little bit to this one from the other ones. Perfect. Now you don't have to do this. You could just eyeball it and let them be the size that they are. They don't all have to be perfectly the same size. I'm just giving you some options here. The engineer in me likes to keep things all the same. This one's a little under. Be good enough. Okay, and then this last one should be, all right. Guess apparently my math was a little off. Okay. Just take a little from each one. Just make them about the same size. Good enough. All right, so now we've got our 8 dough balls. And what we're gonna do is just give it a quick pre-shape. So what I just try to do is we're gonna make it into a little ball. So we can take our little dough knife and we're just gonna sort of create a little ball. You can use 2 hands and just sort of make them into a little ball. I like to sort of just drag, you can do a little drag and rotate it, make a little ball and stick it off to the side. So you can sort of just make it into a ball, and then we can just give it that little tug. If you've got the dough knife, you can just sort of spin it around on it, and that'll make it into a little ball. What this does is this just gives it a little bit of pre-shaping so that it'll hold its ball shape when we're doing the final shaping. The other thing it does is it deflates a little bit of the air out of this. It's not like a sourdough loaf where we want this to be super tall and big. The bagels we want to be, we want the bagels to rise, but we don't necessarily want them to be super tall. So again, you can take the dough and drag it, give it a little twirl, drag it, and just do that 3 or 4 times. However you want to sort of make it into a little ball. You can also sort of cup it with your hands and do a little C and drag it. That's another way that people do it. Now, typically what we do at this point is let it sit for about 10 minutes. The dough will relax a little bit. I'm going to skip over that step because by the time we get to doing all the next pieces, it'll end up have been sitting for about 10 minutes. So I think it'll be fine for the demo. Any questions so far?
I'm not sure if this one got answered, so I apologize if this already did, but I was looking back to see if I missed anything. What is the temperature for the proofer again?
Oh, good question. 78 degrees is about what I try to go for. Somewhere between 75 and 82. I found when I do the oven light trick, it sometimes gets up to about 84 degrees. That's okay too. You can always turn the light off and it'll go back down. Then you can turn the light back on, it'll go back up. I sometimes just stick my little kitchen thermometer into the oven since it's not really very warm. I can just stick it in there.
And then Keith is asking if you have a sourdough starter recipe.
I do. I've been keeping my starter alive for a number of years. It's hiding somewhere here in the fridge because I put it away so we could do the bagel class. But mostly what I just use for my starter is a mix of wheat flour and bread flour and a little bit of water every day. If people are curious about sourdough, I can share some recipes and some books that are really great for that. All right, so what I'm gonna do is normally we'd cover this with a kitchen towel for 10 minutes and just let it sit and relax. But the first dough ball that we made has been sitting for 5 or 10 minutes now. So, so we're just gonna start here. We've pre-shaped it, but what we're gonna do now is we're gonna do its final shaping into a ball and give it a little bit more structure. So we're just gonna take it and stretch it out a little bit. And then we're gonna pull one side of it. So I'll pull the right side, fold it to the left, about halfway back on top. And we'll do the opposite side, fold it back on top. We'll take the bottom, sort of wrap it on top, and then take the top and wrap it over. So now we have a little hot doggy thing. And we're just gonna pull the dough and then rotate it a little bit, pull it towards us. And we're just gonna keep doing this a few times. And that's gonna create some tension You can see the surface is starting to stretch and get smoother. And so this will be our final shaping for each of the little dough balls. So we'll just do that again. Once you get good at it, you can pull both at the same time and then fold them on top of each other. Pull the bottom one about halfway through, the top. Did a question come in?
Yeah, the question is, why do you do this twice?
Good question. So the pre-shaping gives some structure to the bread and to the dough, but we didn't give it a full shape, so it's not going to hold itself into the bagel shape as well if we skip to the second one. And if we skipped the first one and just went straight to the final shaping, then it could flatten a little bit more than we want it. And so I like to do the double, the pre-shape and then the final shape. Just makes the bagels hold shape a little bit better. So we'll
Hey,
pull
there's
one side.
an echo. Erin, did your other device go off mute?
Still on mute.
It might be your headphones. Well, it went away now, actually. Okay, good.
Maybe if I stopped talking, it went away.
No, now I hear it.
It's still here. Let's move the other camera further. Maybe that helps a little.
Awesome, thank you.
Cool. All right, so we're just doing this final shaping. Came back, didn't it?
Wait, the noise is back. I'm just gonna double check that everyone's on mute and it's not feedback we're getting. Okay, I think we're fine.
It may be that my iPhone is not fully turned off its sound. You can't like completely mute it. Okay, so again, we're gonna take them, stretch them out in either direction, fold it halfway back, pull the bottom, fold it halfway on, pull the top, fold it around, and then drag it towards us, give it a spin, drag it towards us, give it a spin. Now, meanwhile, one thing that I've done is I've started to boil the water in the pasta pot. You don't have to quite do it at this point. We'll probably let it rest a little bit in the normal recipe, but for the demo today, we're gonna skip letting it sit again, and we'll just go straight into boiling. Almost done with the final shaping of all 8. Although we get to have the fun part and make them into bagels after this. There are multiple ways of doing the final shaping of the bagel into an actual bagel with a hole. The sort of easy way that I've learned is to just stick your finger in through the center and make a hole. You could also take these and roll them out into a log and then combine them. That's sort of what the bagel shops will do. But I find just using a slightly floured finger to make the hole works quite well. And you don't have to worry about whether or not you make a perfect seam. Okay, so we're pretty much done here. I'm just dragging it along the surface, giving it a slight twirl. Okay, good. Now the last piece that we're gonna do is in the boiling pot, I'm gonna go ahead and add about a tablespoon of barley malt. Just gives it a little bit more flavor. So we'll grab a tablespoon. Can be sort of a heaping tablespoon. And then I just like to Give it a little mix. You'll see if it turns the light on here, it will make the water turn nice and brown. Okay. All right, so now that we have done the final shaping, we would typically let this sit another 10 minutes. But I think these have sat enough, like the first ones that we made have been sitting for a few minutes, so they should be okay. So I'm just gonna put a little flour on my hands. We're just gonna take one of the dough balls, push our finger through it, and make a hole. And then we'll just stretch it out a little bit to make it be about a quarter size, and it's gonna shrink back up. You can see it start shrinking, so you can just give it a little bit of a stretch. And I like to just sort of twirl it around in a circle to make the hole. And at this point, I'm just gonna, to simplify things, I'm gonna put it on one of these pans with parchment. Just, and I'll add a little flour just in case. And so you'll see it's shrinking a little bit, but it keeps about that quarter size hole. So that's perfect. So again, we'll go and stick our finger through. And then we'll just go around in a circle. Stretch out this bagel just a little bit. Due to the tension, all of that strength and structure that we built in the dough earlier, you can see it's starting to shrink back down. So sometimes I may just go back and grab it again and give it a little tug to stretch it out. Depending on how much you stretch it out, you can get Montreal style bagels, which have a little bit bigger hole. I like to keep the hole sort of that quarter size, and it gives you more of the fluffiness in the actual bagel, so you have more width in the actual bread part. Whereas the Montreal bagel, which has a bigger hole, will also have a slightly narrower breaded part. So again, we're just sticking our finger through, making a hole. Doesn't have to be perfectly in the center. I try to get there, but if you don't, you can always stretch part of it that is wider than the other part, and like this part's a little narrow, so I'm just going to ignore it and stretch the rest of it, and that'll just even it out.
I taught you. You don't make mistakes. You guys
got 4 done. Almost there. The other thing that I just did real quick was preheat the oven to 425. That way we can show actual baking. Have any new questions come in?
Yes.
Any
So
questions on the
one
shaping?
from a little bit ago was a question about the method to the shaping. So like the kind of fold technique. Like, is there a theory behind the method? Was the question?
I think some of it is efficiency. You can see it takes me a little bit of a while to like make the hole and stretch it out and then get it to be the right thickness for the bagel each time. Since it's just homemade, I tend to not worry too much whether I'm both efficient or if each bagel is perfectly the same size and same thickness. When you roll it out into the log, then you can make sure that each log is the same width and make the same length, and so everything looks pretty perfect. So I assume that's what most of the bagel shops are doing. Was there another question that just came in?
Someone asked earlier, just again, if you could proof at room temperature.
Yeah, so that's actually what we're doing right now. I didn't grab the power cord to the proofer, so this is actually just doing it at room temperature. It may take a little bit longer depending on the temperature of your kitchen. Right now it's about 69 degrees in here, so it's gonna maybe take an hour and a half, an hour and a quarter. Not quite sure, we'll see. If we look at the dough, you know, it's been 20 minutes or so. It hasn't done much yet. So, so at room temperature, it might take a little bit longer. If you're using the oven trick, it'll be a little quicker.
And then we had a question. Someone noticed that you were using the magnets to hold your thing down, and they were asking if like that could go in the oven too, or if that wouldn't work.
Yeah, I don't know where I got these, but I don't know if they're specific oven magnets, but I do all my baking with these, and it just helps keep the parchment down, and they work great. So yes, you can bake with the magnets in there. They will get hot, so obviously just be careful when you take the pan out that you let them cool before removing them. All right, so we're pretty much good here with our 8 bagels. I'm going to move the camera over to the pot, and we're going to boil the bagels. So, all right, that should. We want to boil. We don't want a super high boil. This is a little bit low, so I'm just going to turn the heat up a little bit. We want a little bit more bubbles than this. We don't want a super high amount of bubbles. What that will do is the high bubbles will cause too much air to go into the bagels, and that'll make them not be smooth. So somewhere as a medium boil will work well, and we're about there. So I'm just gonna go and take one of the bagels, and we're just gonna drop it in, and you'll see it will float in a second. Hopefully. Yep, there it's coming back up to the top. And I'll add another one. I can fit about 3 in here. So we'll just go ahead and add 3 bagels. You can see the first one has floated to the top. And at this point, I'm going to start a timer for 1.5 minutes. And so we'll do 1.5 minutes on a side. I'm just going to spread these out. There's the third one. All right, so we'll just let these boil for 1.5 minutes. We're gonna then flip them to the other side, and they'll go for about 3 minutes total. So 1.5 minutes on each side. I don't know if it matters too much, but I like to just space them out a little bit. And what this is doing right here, it's causing them to rise. It's giving them that fluffiness and that New York style bagel feel. And then when we put them in the oven to bake them, it'll give the crisp outer shell. Some of the West Coast style bagel places don't do this boiling step. They just bake it, and that's why those bagels are not very good. And I did add about a tablespoon of barley malt to the water. It just helps give it a little bit extra flavor, helps caramelize it a little bit. One thing I'm also going to do while this is going is I'm going to grab an egg and make a little bit of an egg wash, just because some of the bagels do better with an egg wash. So let's see, boiling still well. So I'm just going to take an egg, the egg in there. These are ready, so we're just going to flip them over. Put the timer on for another 1.5 minutes. And we'll add a tablespoon of water to the egg wash. So we've got our egg, Add a tablespoon of water. And then I'll just take a little bit of a whisk and mix that up. And this will be our egg wash, which we can brush on top of the bagels. If we're going to make a plain bagel, this will give it some of that golden color. Otherwise, it'll be a little rough looking. And I found for whatever reason, my sesame seeds don't want to stick onto the bagel unless I use the egg wash. The poppy seeds tend to work fine without the egg wash. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these bagels out in a few seconds, and we're going to top them. And when they're still wet, they'll top pretty easily. But for those for the plain and for the sesame, I like to use the egg wash. If you want to be a little less chewy bagels, you can go less than 1.5 minutes. If you want chewier bagels, you can go to 2 minutes aside. I've sort of found my own personal sweet spot is about that 1.5 minutes. So what we'll do here, and I'll just make some sesame bagels. So we'll just take the bagel out, put it on the surface here, and we'll, let's do a poppy here. And we'll just add the poppy seeds on top. And that bagel is done. And we'll just bring it back to the parchment. We'll grab the next one. Actually, I'm going to grab all 3 of them since I don't want it to boil anymore. Well, I've got a little brush here. So we'll take our egg wash, brush it on top. And then we'll add some sesame seeds to this one. You can add as many or as little toppings as you'd like. Typically only just do one side of toppings. Okay. My hands to transfer it. I'll make another sesame one. Just a little bit of egg wash on top. All right. Now we can take some more bagels, put it in the water. We'll do another 3. 1, 2. And 3. You can do toppings on the bottom. I've found they tend to fall off just from how they bake. And I think if you look at most bagel places, they just top on one side, but you can do both sides. Depends on how much you want. On a cheese bagel, you know, I think generally, ideally, you would not need an egg wash. But it all depends on how the dough is doing and how sticky it gets. If you want to play it safe the first time, add a little bit of egg wash. You can add just a small amount, and that'll just add to a little bit of that stickiness. Let's see. We've got some minced garlic. I'll grab some garlic. We can make a garlic bagel. Got about 30 more seconds, and then we'll flip this one over. It's always the waiting game at this point. Like you can see them. You can see here we've got bagels. They're almost ready. All right, it's time to flip them. So we will You can use a spatula here, a spoon. I like to have this little small basket. It just makes it a little easier. I've used a flat spatula with grates before. They tend to slide off a little, so you just have to be a little careful. You can see they're definitely poofing up. If we show you the difference between the bagels that are boiled versus the unboiled bagels, you can see the boiling definitely has caused them to grow. So that is why we boil them. It gives them that nice chewy little flavor. Let's see, can I get this back here? Cool. We don't use steam in the oven for bagels. We just boil them and then they go in the oven just as regular. The boiling is what's causing them to rise here, and then the baking will give them the nice golden crisp. And we are boiling with the barley syrup. So we added about a tablespoon of barley syrup to the water here. It just helps give it a little bit more flavor. You can also do it without the barley syrup. I'm not quite sure how much extra the barley syrup adds. The recipe that I took this from said to add it, so I did, and I've always made it. So it's one of those things that one day I'll have to try without and see what it does. So we're now got our minute and a half done. So we'll take these three out.
So some people were asking, I'm kind of like trying to like summarize a couple of questions that I was seeing, but is there anything specific with like which seasonings like need egg wash, or is it just like however, like to make sure it's sticking, like the toppings are gonna stick? Because I saw someone asking about like poppy seeds and if that needed the egg wash, I think.
My experience has been that the bigger toppings tend to need the egg wash, and smaller toppings like the poppy seeds do not. With this, everything but the bagel seasoning, this one tends to work pretty well. I haven't had too many problems with that one. You can see it's stuck on pretty well and it's not coming off. I think the sesame seeds themselves, just because they're a little bit larger, they tend to not stick as well. So that's just one downside with the sesame seeds. And I think the garlic, the minced garlic, which I'll use, is also a similar situation where they're just a little too big.
And then we had some people, I think this is kind of similar to like the raisin question, but if you wanted to make like blueberries or add chocolate, you would add that like before you proof your dough?
Yeah, we would add that while we mix the dough prior to that proofing. All right, so we will add the final two bagels into the water.
And then someone's asking, if you're storing in the freezer, how long do you partially bake and what temperature is the oven? And I also think earlier someone asked if like what temperature you use for a convection oven.
Perfect. So we're gonna bake at 425. That's what I've got the oven to. I'm not quite sure if the convection would be slightly different. Maybe the timing will change a little bit. So I would just open it up and look to see if it's got that golden brown color, and that will be the indication that the bagels are ready. The bagels will take about 20 to 25 minutes if you want to bake them all the way through to golden brown. I tend to bake them for about 15 minutes, so they're like almost golden brown. Then I take them out and stick them in the freezer. So that when I put them back in, that way, that sort of 5 minutes of undercooking, when they go back into the oven, they don't burn or crisp up too much. If that makes any sense. And I do bake from frozen. It takes about 15 minutes at 350 to 325. And then they're pretty nice and perfect after that point. All right, time to flip these.
This is always the part of the class where I really regret that we all can't be together in person.
Yeah,
It's like scratch and sniff. You wish you could actually taste and smell, but it's nice to look around and see everyone's virtual kitchens who's still joining with us.
we're almost at the point of baking, which is the exciting part.
So don't, in other words, don't eat yet.
Yes. Yeah, you want them to be crisped up. I've definitely gotten hungry. It's getting close to that dinner time, and these bagels are definitely, I can smell how delicious they're sounding. This is starting to get a little high on the boil, so I'm going to just turn that down. So if you wanted to see what two boiling looks like.
I was just peering around to see if we wanted to do a quick kitchen cam. I see your brother's on here, actually. Hi, Ben.
Aha.
If Ben wants
What's
to.
up?
Hello. I don't know if
What
you're.
good family.
Yeah, let's see. I'm looking to see kitchens and how we're doing. Becky and Sam, are you all cooking along, or are you just watching?
We put the dough together, and now we're gonna put it in the fridge for the night and then have bagels fresh tomorrow. So a little bit of both.
Nice. I love it. Thanks for sharing. And where are you all calling in from?
Near Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Anybody else want to show any progress as we're waiting? I do see our first Tradition Kitchens teacher on here. And I want to say hi to her and just add a quick spotlight. Hi, Leslie. Thanks for all you've done to help champion Tradition Kitchens. Leslie taught Noodle Kugel, our first class, way back when we were in person. And I'm just gonna do one more, pineapple. Are you cooking along? Say hello. Do you hear us? Do you see us? Maybe not. This is the challenge of the kitchen cam. I don't think Pineapple hears us. All right, back to Aaron.
All right, so we're almost done here. I'm just gonna make another poppy seed one. And I've turned my stovetop off because we're all set here. Give my hands a quick rinse. And we are ready to go in the oven. The oven is preheated to 425 degrees. So we should be all set to just go right in. So my cookie sheets are not large enough, so I use 2 of them. They can go in different racks, they can go on the same rack, doesn't really matter. And that's it. That's 15 minutes from now, we'll take them out. That dough looks like it's rising.
Yeah, everybody take a look at Janet. This dough looks gorgeous. I think we need a selfie of it. So smile for the camera. Yay. Love it. Thanks for sharing. Where are you calling in from?
In San Francisco.
Oh, cool. You and Aaron could share bagels in person from a socially safe area. Someday. Awesome.
Cool. Let's make sure not to forget 15 minutes. All right. Do people have any more questions? I'm gonna pull up the chat while we do that.
I'm gonna show off. Some people, I love that some more kitchen cams. Sherry, we are deep in the dough right now. Looks great. How are you and where are you calling in from?
New Orleans.
Ooh, very nice.
It looks a lot bigger than Aaron's, and it feels hard, kind of hard. I ran out of flour and had to use wheat gluten.
Oh, wow. I think it'll be great.
I think so.
It should get a little bit lighter as it rises a little more. So you want it to feel a little bit light and airy. So if it's still feeling heavy, then give it a little more time.
The house is about 55 degrees right now. It's really cold here.
Aha. Yes, my dough has not risen much, a little bit. So definitely that warmer temperature helps. Sherry, how's yours doing?
I'm going to make them tomorrow.
Let's see, Sherry.
Okay, there you go. San Diego, and it is very cold in our house, so I had to put it in a proofer. So
Looking good.
So it's got about another 30 minutes in the proofer. So hopefully it's going to be breakfast for dinner tonight because it's still only 6 o'clock here.
Nice.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, I love it. We have a few more questions in the chat. Ruby, do you want to shout these out for everyone?
Liz is asking if there is a minimum spacing if you're going to be baking them on the cookie sheet.
Go.
Just enough so they're not touching, I think is fine.
And then there's a question. Oh, sorry.
At this point, they're not gonna expand too much more. So they've done most of that in the pot. So so they should be, as long as they're not touching, it should be fine.
And then we have a question about if you find there's a difference between putting them on different racks when you're baking them.
It all sort of depends on your oven. My oven tends to heat this similar throughout, whether the top or the bottom. If your oven is a little bit more finicky, then maybe about halfway through you can switch them out, or if they can all go on the same rack, that also works as well.
And then Heather's asking if you could repeat the time frames after taking the dough out of the fridge.
Yeah, so when you put it in the fridge, so we'll go a little bit underproofed for if you're going to put it in the fridge. So it'll be a little bit less than doubled when you put it in the fridge. Then you can leave it there overnight into the next day. It shouldn't change too much. You can probably go up to 24 hours, maybe even a little bit longer. And then I like to take it out about 15 to 20 minutes before I'm going to start doing all the work. The dough will be really cold when you take it out, so that 15 to 20 minutes just gives the dough a little bit time to warm up. It'll make it a little easier for you to stretch and divide and shape. And it might help it do any final rising if you need it to rise a little bit more.
And then someone was asking, oh, I'm so sorry.
I was just going to say hi, Hope and Ben, my brother.
Hey.
Hi.
Dad, like usual, wants to know if you're shipping home.
Well, by tomorrow, I'm going to have 16 bagels because I've got this other one so we might have to ship some bagels home.
They look beautiful.
Let's hope. A couple more minutes. Glad you learned a bunch, Carol. All right.
Sherry wants to know how you store them.
Let's see. So typically I'll put them in a plastic bag and then they can go in the freezer there. If you have a vacuum sealer, that'll help get rid of a little bit of freezer burn. Although if you're eating them in a couple days or a week, hopefully you shouldn't get much freezer burn. The other thing is you can buy these little sort of fabric bread bags that will help reduce freezer burn as well. I have one of those, which is what we put them in a plastic bag and then put it in that bread bag, and that helps reduce the freezer burn. All good questions. Hopefully everybody has some lox and some cream cheese and schmear to go on top. I'm a butter person myself.
I have a cream cheese question for this crew. It may be controversial. Are people fans of Philadelphia cream cheese, or have you heard of Tempty cream cheese? And if that is not your answer, I may not speak to you. I'm seeing some reactions. Anybody feel free to unmute and chime in. Becky and Sam, are you opinionated on this? Ben?
So Aaron and I have eaten a lot of bagels growing up with our grandparents when they were alive. And I always remember a pink container of Tempty in our grandma's fridge.
Yeah,
That our parents didn't pick up on that.
I love it. Tempty is the pink one. Well, anyone else, if you're very opinionated on cream cheese, my family really, really is. So I won't hate on anyone. Looks like we have another question. Ruby, you want to read this one out?
Okay, so sorry, just kind of skimming. So this person wants to do some bulk baking and then freeze it in a Ziploc bag. And they said, how long can you leave it in the fridge for? Like, how many days could it be left?
The fridge would typically be a fairly, if you can avoid the fridge, that can help dry out the bagels, which obviously you don't want to have happen. So the best options would be either to put it in a plastic bag and just leave it on the counter or in the cabinet, or and a plastic bag is the preferred over paper bag. Or if you're doing bulk, the best thing would be to put them in the freezer. And if they're on the counter, they can last 2 to 3 days. If they're in the freezer, they can last weeks to months. So much better if you're doing bulk to put them in the freezer, which is what we do. Hopefully that helps. Correct. Freezer, not the fridge. Doing on time. Still 7 minutes.
As we're waiting, I was wondering if people would be up for a fun little experiment that we've never tried before. And if so, it's called breakout rooms. If anyone hasn't done that before in a Zoom call, basically it will randomly place us in small groups. And so you can actually get a chance to know others who are on the call. It might be kind of fun for those of us who are still sticking around if you want to, and then we can come back and join Aaron. Would people be up for that? I'm seeing some like heads nodding. All right, we're gonna try it. Don't worry, like you will not disappear. It'll just take a minute for you to go. And if at any time you want to come back, but I'll put us into breakout rooms for about 5 minutes. And when you do, if you could turn on your video, say hello to the other person who is in the call or the other couple of people who are with you, and introduce yourself, say your favorite kind of bagel, just meet each other. I think it'll be really fun. And then we'll come back in like 4 to 5 minutes and I can bring everyone back so it will magically happen. And if you have to go, I know we're over, so we appreciate those of you who are still with us, but I know people are looking for more connection during this time. So we're just gonna give this a chance. So there'll be small groups of breakout rooms and I'm creating them now. Your breakout rooms will not be recorded. So they're all open. Feel free to randomly go to the room. There are 4 to 5 rooms. Thanks, everyone. You should all be coming back. I didn't give you too much notice. I just sort of pulled you out of the rooms. How was everyone's conversations? Did people enjoy? I bounced around to a few rooms and it was fun to see people talking.
Yes.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Cool. Anyone meet someone who lived nearby and learn anything interesting? Want to share? Paula, you're smiling. Did you have a good chat?
Oh yeah, it was a nice chat.
Yeah. One of the things I miss about real life is I used to go to different activities and meet people and talk with them. And so this is the virtual version of it. So we hope everyone enjoyed. I'm going to try to mute people as you're coming back so there's not too much background noise. But we hope everyone enjoyed. And Brianna and Ruby, if you can help me mute people, that would be awesome. Anyone want to share a highlight?
I think I muted Aaron by accident. So if he could just unmute himself. Sorry, Aaron.
Perfect.
Anyone have
Let's
one
see.
highlight they want to share? When I bounced into a room, I saw that 2 people like lived down the street from each other, and that was kind of fun. Well, can I get like a thumbs up if you liked that? And I won't be offended if there's thumbs down. Okay, I see some thumbs up. That's great. We're hoping to just spark more connections. So we hope you made a new friend or enjoyed a different conversation than usual. So yay, I'm loving this. So Erin, where are we in the process? And I'm seeing we are quite far along. They look beautiful.
Yeah, the alarm just went off. If we pin the iPhone version of me,
yeah,
then we can see the bagels.
Ruby got it. Awesome.
So they're like just about turning golden brown. So I've taken them out, and I'll let them cool.
You want me to turn on your video? No.
I like to cut them in half before I freeze them. It just makes it a little easier for when we take them out of the freezer. You can see the plain one has that nice golden color from the egg wash. There was a question I think I saw that said, can you use fresh garlic or onion? Typically you want to use dried. It will cook and not burn and not feel raw. So if you can take your fresh onion and dry it out, or garlic, that would be the way to do it. So I just used some dried minced garlic that I had. And these are about ready to eat. The hard part is to not eat them now. I might have to have one. We'll see. It's a pre-dinner snack. I baked them entirely at 425. I did it for only 15 minutes because we're gonna stick these in the freezer. If I left it a little 5 more minutes longer, we'll see a little bit more golden color on these. You can see the bottom side gets a little bit of that cooked color. They're hot still. So any of the toppings that I tried to put on the bottom probably would have fallen off. You can see here the sesame seeds are staying on pretty well thanks to the egg wash. On these, the poppy seeds didn't need the egg wash. And everything with the bagel, that stayed on pretty well without the egg wash. So yeah, these are our bagels.
Gorgeous. They look amazing. I wish I had one right now. Unfortunately, all I have is like an Aldi brand bagel, which is good, but nothing like homemade bagels. So thank you so much, Erin. This was amazing.
Wonderful. I'm glad we could all learn how to make bagels, and hopefully tomorrow we can see all the bagels you've made.
Yeah, if you make your bagels and you'd like to share them with us, you can find us on Facebook or Instagram. We're just called Tradition Kitchens on both. And please, send us the pictures or send us an email. We would love to hear more from you guys. We have some more classes coming up that we would also love to have you guys attend. And we will be sending out in an email all of the ingredients and instructions and everything, and we will get the recordings to you. We have this little recording like recipe library thing, and through that we like to share our recipes and class recordings so anyone can access them that was at the class later.
Well, we'll see everyone soon. One of our teachers, Debbie Lewis, who taught us bagels last year, actually was here, and she's teaching Hamantaschen. I think that's our next class. We've got a really special Black History Month event. Ruby, what's Karan teaching us on next Friday?
Yes, on the 19th, we're going to be having a class for learning to make fried chicken tenders and biscuits. We have a lot of really cool classes coming up this month, and please stay tuned. We will have more next month and in the future, and we're always happy if any of you have a special recipe you'd like to teach. We would love to feature any of you guys. And Julia just sent in the chat our, it's called Substack. It's our cooking library. But yeah, please share with us online if you'd like to teach a class or know someone who would. We would love to hear from you guys as well. And thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Lots of exciting cooking happening, and shout out to Erin. This was awesome, and we really appreciate you so much. So lots of love and appreciation. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye. Great class.
Thank you. This is always my favorite part. I put it on gallery and I watch everyone wave goodbye. Say
Thanks.
goodbye.
This was great. I loved it. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Bye.
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 Bye, Angela. Bye, everyone. All right. I think, bye, Jack.
Bye, Jack.
Bye, Megan.
Bye, Megan.
All right. I think we're going to end it. Let me just hit stopping on the recording really fast.